I'm arriving at Melville Island, home of the Armdale Yacht Club. The club is the second oldest yacht club in Nova Escocia, Canada. Okay. Let me give you some time to open Google Maps. Have you opened it? Zoom in the Halifax city. A little bit more, right there. Can you see the club in the northwest arm? That is where I am today talking with Nick White about learning to sail. Nick has more than 20 years of sailing experience and is the head instructor of the Learn to Sail program in the club. I asked Nick, if I have to enroll in a sailing class today, what's the best option? A dinghy or a keelboat?
I think for kids, dinghies definitely, just based on their size. We can't really put like an 8-year-old in a keelboat unless they're with a bunch of adults, but it's just not a great way for them to start learning how to sail. So for the kids, definitely dinghies and teenagers. But once you get kind of beyond that age group, I would say keelboats are a good place to start. Small keelboats, because it's a lot easier to manage and more approachable than trying to jump into a big keelboat when you've never sailed before. For example, the keelboats that we have here at our sailing school are quite small. They're 27 feet long, but they're narrow and they don't have a big cabin. There's no motor, so they're very approachable, and they can turn really quickly. They can stop quickly. So it is like a big dinghy. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. You don't really have to worry about flipping it over or anything. And it's much more approachable for people who are, from an older age group who might not have the flexibility or the strength or even the confidence to sail a smaller dinghy. And a lot of people are scared of flipping the boat over. That's like a normal thing. So
I was scared.
Yeah, so when you're sailing a keelboat, that's something you don't have to worry about at all. So personally, I love dinghy sailing, but at this stage in my life, I prefer keelboats. Fast ones.
Nick, you've been training people on sailing for a while. When the adults training entered in the mix?
I spent a lot of years teaching, coaching kids from when I was 15 until I was 25 or 26. And that was really fun. I really enjoyed teaching the kids. They're hilarious, and it's fun to see them start from, 0 and then, going up through the levels as they get older and just getting better and better each summer. Because a lot of kids, they would come here first time, and the kids that really enjoyed it, they would just keep coming back every year and, work on more levels, and then or even just come back and have fun. So that was always really rewarding and fun to do. I moved away for a couple of years, and then when I came back, I started teaching the adult keelboat program just pretty much exclusively at that point, because this club no longer had junior sail for kids. From that point on, just did the adult keelboating program, and every year we've grown that program, got more boats, more and more people have signed up for it, and to the point now where it's, the past few years, we've had very long wait lists and so much interest, people trying to get out with us. So yeah, it's been an interesting kind of evolution.
So with the evolution now, with more students, more classes, I believe you had different experiences. Is there something you can share with us, or good experiences and things that you remembered?
Well, I guess every year I have those experiences. It's always nice when people really get into the sport. So many times I've seen, the spark kind of, or the fire gets lit in people where they're like, oh my God, I love this sport. And it's they really are catching on to things and getting better, and they just seem so into it. And that always is super rewarding for me. And that is one of the best parts of being a sailing coach for me. And just watching people get so into it, and then watching people progress. And with the adult program where we start in June and we end in September, and seeing how much people learn and how much better people get from start to finish is always the end of the summer is always my favorite part for the lessons anyway. Of course I'm sad when summer is ending, but it's watching the sailors and how well they're doing at the end of the summer. It makes me so happy. And it also makes my job so much easier because I don't have to constantly be telling people, oh no, you need to do it this way, you need to do it this way. I just can kind of sit back a little bit more and like watch how well everyone is doing and give tips rather than being like constantly telling people what to do.
So talking about telling people what to do. Armdale is a beautiful inlet in the Atlantic Ocean, which brings some joy and challenge for sailors in the area. So what do you think about that?
Definitely, that's something that I mention to people a lot when they're in this sailing program. The Northwest Arm, like where we're sailing here, it is narrow, and on both sides there's hills, there's buildings, and whatever, and it makes it challenging in a couple ways. Like when I'm talking about the hills and the buildings, that makes the wind conditions challenging, because if the wind is coming, from the side, like across from the east or the west, then it's kind of being chopped up by the hills and by the buildings. So it leads to a lot of dead spots and a lot of very shifty winds. So when you're learning how to sail, that can be really frustrating, but it's also kind of forcing you to pay close attention and think about, okay, well, there isn't much wind here, or I don't know what's going on. So how do I fix this? How do I get moving again? So I find that is really good, helping people, figure things out rather than just having a consistent wind all the time where they don't have to think about it. They don't have to problem solve. And then with the traffic, the high traffic situation can be stressful sometimes, especially on the weekends. But we do a lot of lessons on the evenings, and that's usually not too bad. But we have to really prepare people in terms of like teaching them about the right-of-way rules with regards to power boats and other sailboats and canoes and kayaks, and just how to avoid any kind of risky situations. So again, it's something that we are constantly managing when we're on the water as instructors. Like we are, our heads are basically spinning the whole time on any day, because that's part of the job. We need to make sure that we're keeping a close eye on everyone and what they're doing, where they're going, what risks they might encounter. But yeah, we're actively managing all of that. So if we do see that someone is potentially in conflict with another boat that's out there, then we make sure that we let them know well in advance to avoid any kind of confusing situation.
And how do you keep the calm? How do you keep your head in the right space when you see a problem? I remember we had a very fun moment in the boat, and suddenly saw water entering the boat and start to bailing out. So I was trying to think about, there's something wrong here. And you saw it, approach us, and just give us some tips to solve it quickly. How do you keep that so calm?
That just, a lot of that comes from experience and just, I guess, knowing the boats and knowing how to deal with those kinds of situations, and like knowing what's serious and what's not serious. And also, like, as an instructor, like, you don't want to scare your students, and you don't want to make them freak out, so that you can't approach those kinds of situations where you're yelling and it seems like you're panicking, because the reaction you'll get from your student is not going to be very good. There's obviously some situations where like they're in grave danger, which that would call for a very serious response from the instructor. But in the case what you're talking about, like there was just some water coming in through the automatic bailers that were open, but it's just a very minimal amount of water coming in. All you have to do is close them and then bail some of that water out. But those keel boats, they also have bulkheads and they're sealed, and they won't, as long as the bulkheads aren't perforated or anything, like they won't sink. Like it could get a little bit swamped and slow, but I guess it's just about kind of maintaining a level head when you're out on the water as an instructor and as a sailor.
So more boats, more people, which maybe help to answer the question, why do I need to learn about the rules of the road while taking sailing classes?
Because it's not only the people that are learning how to sail in our program that don't have a lot of experience or know all of the rules. There's a lot of people that have boats, power boats, jet skis, whatever, sailboats. There's a lot of people that have boats or go out on the water, and they don't necessarily know all the rules either. and they're just kind of flying by the seat of their pants, or they're out, you know, on an afternoon, beautiful sunny day, drinking beers and whatever, just kind of powering around, sailing around. So yeah, everyone has to be aware of each other when we're out there. It's you know, sailing and boating might seem like a very relaxing and chill activity, but if things go wrong, you know, that's very serious, so you always have to be prepared.
So let me follow up on something. I heard you telling about be flexible, problem-solving skills, and I remember once you told me about you have a category of boats here, that's the Solings, but they are not the same. So every time you go to a boat, the rigging is a little bit different, so you have to be more flexible to learn that one as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like a lot of boats last for a long time, fiberglass boats especially, you know, especially if people are taking good care of them. So you have boats from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and over those years, like people have modified them to meet their own needs or preferences. And you know, boats, like even if it's a soling like we use, for example, like those boats were manufactured for multiple decades. So ones that were made in the 70s will be set up differently from ones that are made in the 80s, you know, just from the factory. And then of course the owners may have modified things. So yeah, all the boats that we have came from different places. They're all different ages, so they're all a little bit different, but at the same time, they are all the same design of boat. So they're not like, it's not like a completely different boat. They're just like set up a little bit differently.
After spending some times with these different lines and controls and tweaking everything in that boat, how transferable is this knowledge to a bigger boat or a different manufacturer? So how can I use that knowledge in my future sailing experience?
Once you learn how everything works and like the names of all the parts and all of that, then going from one boat to another, at first you might be like, okay, this looks different, but you can figure out what does what once you just try things out. And it's quite obvious when you look at where certain things are attached, what they're doing, but some other ones aren't super obvious, so you have to kind of play around, pull on this thing and see what it does. You know, it's a good idea to do this kind of stuff at the dock rather than out sailing on a windy day. But yeah, it is very much about being flexible, and being resourceful is one thing that I tell people a lot.
So following that thought, are there skills or qualities that sailing can help to improve?
You know, being a sailor, one of the things that you really have to, you know, an important quality to have is resourcefulness, because if something goes wrong, if something breaks, you need to be able to think quickly, how can I fix this with things that I have here and the knowledge that I have? So it's like, if a part breaks on the boat and you need to fix it quickly, it's like, okay, I know I have this and this and this and this, so how can I make this work again, you know, without all of the tools and parts that I would have available if I was at the dock?